Have you ever felt a presence, a chill in the air, a whisper of something unseen? This tale, inspired by the master of macabre himself, Edgar Allan Poe, explores the dark secrets of a cursed black cat and the haunting whispers it carries. Can redemption be found in the shadows of the past? The Black Cat's Curse. Chapter 1. A house left watching. They say you can still hear the scratching, faint, steady from somewhere deep behind the walls. Not like rats, not like wind, like claws dragging across old wood, counting down to something no one wants to see. Thorn House has been empty for 40 years, but not forgotten. Never that. The last man to live there was Elias Thorn, poet, recluse, and madman, depending on who tells it. He moved into the manor after his wife vanished, claiming she left in the night without a word. No note, no suitcase, just absence. He told the police she was unhappy, that she'd been distant. He even cried, but no one saw her leave, and no one ever saw her again. What they did see, what they still whisper about when the air turns strange, was a black cat that started appearing at the windows. It would sit in the parlour, tail curled neatly around its feet, watching the road. Its eyes were gold, unnaturally bright. Its stare didn't move. Not until you blinked. Most thought he'd gotten a new pet, until someone remembered the Thorns already had a cat, and it had died 6 months before she disappeared, buried behind the garden wall by Elias himself. Neighbours watched him dig the hole. So how could it be back? The cat never aged, never blinked, never left the house, except once. The morning after Elias was taken away. When the police finally entered Thorn House, they found it empty of people, but not of memory. The table was still set for two. A teacup rested in the fireplace, shattered. The upstairs hallway was lined with dozens of small scratches, just above ankle height. And in the attic, they found a single line carved into the floorboards. She sees through him now. No one claimed the property. No one dared tear it down. It said that even the vines refused to grow across the windows, because something still lives there. Something with a name, once whispered like a warning. The cat. People report sightings now and then. The shape of a feline silhouette behind the lace curtain. A gold glint in the darkness. A shadow that moves when you don't. And always, the scratching. It isn't loud. It doesn't beg. It waits. And sometimes, when the wind hits just right, you can almost hear it purring. Not like a comfort, like a promise. Chapter 2. Unveiling the Curse. Before the house was haunted, before the man went mad, before the scratching began, there was a cat and a woman, and a secret older than the walls it would one day rot through. Her name was Isadora Thorn, his wife, or so the papers said. The villagers whispered otherwise. They said she wasn't truly his, not in the way that mattered. She was wild, wandering, a creature with thorns of her own. They said Elias found her under a blood moon, speaking to things that didn't have names. That she healed birds without touching them. That the garden only bloomed when she sang to it. They said she came with a cat. Not a stray. Not a pet. A shadow with breath and judgment in its eyes. It walked like it had somewhere to be. It stared like it already knew what you'd done. It slept on Isadora's chest and hissed at everyone else, even Elias. Especially Elias. They lived in Thorn House for 3 years. 3 quiet, strange years. She painted symbols above every doorway in oil and salt. He wrote less, drank more. The neighbours said he was afraid of her, and more afraid of being alone with himself. Then, one spring, the cat died. No one knows how, just that one day it was gone, and Elias was seen burying something behind the garden wall. Isadora stopped speaking. Not a word, not a sound. She stood in the parlour window every day, watching the trees. She didn't blink, didn't cry, didn't leave. The curse, they say, didn't begin with death. It began with a silence. 2 weeks later, Isadora vanished. Elias told the constable she'd left him, that she couldn't bear the loneliness, or the pressure, or the grief. He said she packed a small bag and walked out without a word. But her shoes were still by the door. Her favourite book lay open beside her empty teacup, and the circle she always drew for protection was scratched deep into the front step, as if by claws, not chalk. And then the cat returned. Not just any black cat, the same one, same crooked tail, same gold eyes, but different. Its shadow stretched longer than its body. Its paws left no prints in the dust. It never blinked. It sat in Isadora's window. It scratched the same door she once painted with honey and rue. It purred, low, constant, unnerving. Elias tried to chase it out, locked it in a room, sealed the fireplace, poisoned food. Nothing worked. The cat remained, unfed, unbothered, unmoving. It didn't want food. It wanted something else. In his journals, recovered years later, Elias wrote of dreams. Dreams where he stood in a room with no doors, no ceiling, where the cat stared at him from across an invisible distance. Behind the cat, a figure, hair like coal dust, hands like roots, eyes full of fire and frost. She never spoke, but he woke up screaming. The entries became erratic. He started referencing stories, the black cat, the telltale heart. He said Poe hadn't written them from fiction. He said they were warnings, manuals, confessions. He claimed the cat was not a ghost, not a punishment, but a mirror, one that only showed its true face when you stopped lying to yourself. He said it changed shape in the reflection, that sometimes in the mirror it stood on two legs, that sometimes its mouth moved, that sometimes it had her eyes, Isadora's eyes. The curse, he wrote, was simple. She died unheard. He buried her name with the truth. Now she watches through the one thing he can't silence, the thing he thought he could kill without consequence. The transformation wasn't sudden. It happened over weeks. The cat's shadow began to flicker. Its reflection in glass appeared before it turned the corner. Its purring changed pitch, low, too low, like a whisper in a forgotten language. Neighbours claimed the house began to change with it, paint peeling in rooms with no moisture, doors refusing to stay closed, mirrors cracking from the inside, and always the scratching, not frantic, not violent, methodical, persistent, as if something trapped was tracing the outline of the past again and again, waiting for someone to finally look. By the time they came for Elias, the man was already lost, sitting on the attic floor, muttering into the walls. He told them she wasn't dead. He told them she was still in the house, just out of sight. He told them the cat was her witness, and that it would not stop until someone listened. They took him away, but the cat stayed, and the scratching never stopped. Chapter 3. Echoes of the Past. They called her reckless. She preferred the term curious. Mara Ellings was a researcher, a collector of stories the world tried to forget. Folklore, hauntings, whispers passed down like bad blood through old towns. So when she heard about Thorn House, about the poet, the vanished wife, and the cat that didn't die, She packed a recorder, 3 notebooks, and a bottle of whiskey, and made the trip before reason could catch up. She didn't believe in ghosts, but she believed in memory, and some memories don't stay buried. The house looked exactly as the stories described it: skeletal, smothered in ivy, breathing out dust and the scent of something long overdue. The gate shrieked when she pushed it open. The front door didn't creak. It exhaled. Inside, it was colder than the air should allow. She whispered into her recorder. Day 1. The structure's sound, mostly. No sign of squatters. No power. Floorboards are intact. Also, it's watching me. She tried to laugh. It didn't land. She explored slowly, one room at a time. Everything felt paused, like the house was holding its breath, waiting to see if she would flinch. She found the first clue in the parlour. A stack of old letters beneath a warped floorboard. Most unreadable. All addressed to a single name. Isadora Thorne. No return address. The last one was different. Torn. Charred around the edges. Written in a frantic hand. I hear the scratching again. It knows. I can't keep pretending I don't remember. There was no signature. Only a single black cat hair sealed under wax. Later that night, as she unrolled her sleeping bag in the study, she saw it. Just a flicker, a reflection in the glass of the darkened window. Golden eyes. Gone before she turned. She checked the recorder. It had shut off. Battery full. No sound, except for the faintest rhythmic clicking. 3 beats, like claws. She didn't sleep. Day 2. The air had changed, heavier. Silence wasn't empty now. It felt layered, like voices hiding just beneath the threshold of hearing. She found the second clue in the cellar. Buried beneath a false wall was a journal wrapped in oilcloth and tied with silver thread. The handwriting matched the letters. Elias Thorne's final entries. Most of it was nonsense, spiraling thoughts, drawings of eyes, poetry written backward. But near the end, one line was underlined in blood-red ink. If the cat shows you her shadow, it's already too late. That night, Mara saw the cat for the first time. Not in shadow, not in reflection. In the hallway, sitting in front of a closed door. Its head tilted, tail twitching, staring straight at her. She blinked. It didn't. She stepped forward. It vanished, not into the air, but into the wall, like smoke soaked into stone. She stared at the door behind it. A heavy oak thing, reinforced with rusted iron bolts. No keyhole, no handle. Only a symbol, faint but visible under the dust. A circle, split down the middle by what looked like a single claw mark. She traced it with her finger, and the scratching started. Not behind the door, from the floor beneath her. She backed away. That night, the mirror in the parlour cracked down the centre, though she heard no impact. In the fragments, her reflection smiled before she did. She recorded everything. The sounds, the cold, the eyes. And on day 3, she found the portrait. Hidden in the attic, wrapped in linen, buried beneath planks of wood. Isadora. But not just her. Isadora, standing in the garden, holding the black cat. Behind her, Elias, half-shadowed, eyes unreadable. At the bottom of the frame, painted in faint gold. Some doors were never meant to close. Mara stared at it for a long time. She whispered, "What happened to you?" The wind outside answered, or so she thought, until she played back the recording later that night and heard something she hadn't said. A woman's voice, software unforgiving. "He buried me." Chapter 4. The haunting unfolds. Mara didn't leave. She should have. But by the fourth day, it was already too late. Not because the doors were locked, not because the roads had vanished, but because something had settled inside her. A weight behind the ribs. A hum beneath her skin. As if the house had reached inside and twisted the key of her spine. And now, it wouldn't let go. The cat appeared more often now. Never moving. Always watching. Sometimes in the mirror. Sometimes at the foot of her sleeping bag. Once, perched atop a grandfather clock that hadn't ticked in 40 years. Its eyes followed her even in dreams. Especially in dreams. She began hearing sounds she couldn't place. A breath behind her that wasn't hers. A low hum vibrating through the walls. A woman's voice humming the same tune over and over again. Soft, broken, unfinished. She checked her recordings. Nothing. Static. Until midnight each night, when the static sharpened. And the scratching returned. 3 beats. Always 3. The light she brought began to fail. Not flicker. Fail. Batteries drained in seconds. Bulbs cracked with no heat. Only her lantern, an old oil-fed thing she'd brought as backup, stayed lit. It cast everything in a low, flickering glow. Shadows danced longer than they should. Corners warped. The cat's silhouette stretched like a living scar across the walls. On the 5th night, she tried to sleep, but the scratching woke her. This time, from under the floor, beneath her spine. She sat up, heart stammering, and there it was, just beyond the lantern's reach. The cat, sitting in the hallway again. But this time, its eyes weren't gold. They were white, pale, empty, like candle wicks snuffed out. She stood, trembling. The cat turned its head, slow, deliberate, and walked down the hall, toward the locked door. She followed. The claw-marked circle on the wood was glowing faintly now, as if traced by breath and memory. She touched it. The door opened. It shouldn't have. There was no key, no handle. But it opened. And what lay beyond was not a room. It was a staircase, descending into something colder than death. She followed the cat down. The steps led to a chamber of stone and rot, and something more. The air was thick with salt and soot. Charcoal runes covered the walls. Old candles stood like sentinels, unlit but still warm. And in the centre of the room, a circle, carved into the floor. The same one Isadora had drawn above every door in the house. Protection, or warning. Inside it, a pile of old bones, too small for a human, surrounded by wilted roses and 3 broken mirrors. Mara fell to her knees. The cat circled once around the bones, then stared at her, unblinking. And finally, something spoke. Not the cat, not Isadora, the house. It whispered through the walls, through the stone, through the weight of memory itself. He buried the truth. She clawed her way back. Mara understood. This wasn't just a haunting. It was a binding. Not vengeance, not wrath. Justice. A reckoning written in claw and silence. The curse wasn't placed on Elias. It was born from him. From the lie. From the silence. From the act of unmaking a woman with love sharp enough to bleed. And the cat. It had never been a familiar. It had been a mirror. A vessel. A voice for the voiceless. A soul that could not rest until someone else heard her scream. Mara's voice cracked as she whispered, "I hear you now." And the air shifted. The cold receded. The cat blinked, slowly for the first time. Then stood, walked past her, and disappeared up the stairs. Mara was alone again. But the scratching had stopped. Chapter 5. Redemption and the Truth. The scratching stopped, but the silence that followed was not peace. It was waiting. Mara emerged from the cellar just before dawn, skin cold, heart steady. The house felt different, not lighter, but older, like something had finally exhaled after decades of holding breath. She whispered into her recorder, though her voice barely carried. I know what happened, and I know what must come next. She gathered what the house had shown her. The letters to Isadora, the broken mirrors, the cracked music box, the cat's unmarked grave, and, most importantly, the journal. Elias's last words, before madness swallowed what little was left of him. She returned to the garden just as the sun broke through the grey. The grave still sat beneath the withered tree, untouched, unnamed. Mara knelt and placed the journal on the soil. Then, with trembling fingers, she read the final entry aloud. I buried her once. Not her body, her voice. I spoke over it, I sealed it. I left her to rot beneath the weight of my cowardice. And now she speaks through the one thing I couldn't silence, through claw, through eyes, through memory. If you found this, finish what I could not. Mara lit the page with a match. Let it burn. Ash scattered across the grave. The wind shifted. The tree, long dead, dropped a single yellow leaf onto the earth. The cat appeared behind her, silent, its eyes no longer gold, now soft, diamond soils like sunset. It circled the grave once, then sat at her side. No growl, no purr, only presence. Mara reached out. It didn't flinch. For the first time she touched it, its fur was real, warm, alive. And yet she could feel something leaving through her fingertips, not a spirit, not a soul, a memory, one that had never belonged to her, but had lived through her just the same. She looked down. The cat was gone. Only the grave remained. But something had changed. The circle Isadora once carved now glowed faintly in the dirt, not with power, but with release. A gate unlatched, a final silence that didn't threaten. It welcomed. Mara returned to the house one last time. Every mirror was cracked, except one. In it, she saw herself. Not distorted, not delayed, just whole. She whispered, It's finished. And from somewhere in the quiet, a voice, soft, clear, whole. Thank you. When she left Thorn House, the air felt lighter. The gate no longer groaned. The garden had begun to bloom again. Tiny white blossoms along the path she'd walked alone just days ago. She never spoke of what she saw beneath the house. Not to the press, not to the historians, not to the scholars who begged for answers. But she published the journal, in full. And on the first page, she added a note. Not all hauntings are meant to frighten. Some are meant to be heard. And on quiet nights, when the sky is clear and the moon is low, some say you can still see a black cat sitting in the garden outside Thorn House. Not watching, just resting. If you heard scratching behind the walls, would you listen? Tell us what you think the cat truly was. Ghost, guardian, or something darker. And let us know which legend, myth, or haunting you'd like us to explore next. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe for more.